We last left off in the middle of configuring the tank farm mass attribute template, where Brandon posed a very interesting question. Where does this data come from? In prior years, this course used the Rollup custom data reference because when the course was originally created, we did not have an official offering, and that includes the Rollup data reference itself. Well, nowadays we do have an official offering, specifically Asset Analytics, and you're going to find it fits the bill quite nicely for what we're trying to accomplish. So we're going to be creating an asset analysis that will perform the mass rollup, and we want to save the calculated output to history, which therefore means we want the mass attribute template to use the PyPoint data reference. When we make that little change, you'll see a default naming pattern appear in your settings window. Now you don't have to use this naming pattern, you're free to use one of your own choosing, but we've already used this same pattern before for the tank levels, so let's go ahead and use it here for the mass. This of course means though that on my PyData archive, I need to have, I would expect to have something called tankfarm1.mass. So popping up SMT, you'll see that I just have that. I do have a point called tankfarm1.mass. Now, whereas the levels we're using just a point source of R because it's a random interface, I gave a different name to this particular tag. I chose the pattern of AA underscore mass rollup for AA being Asset Analytics. That kind of distinguishes it between PE or ACE or other. Anyway, now that we've got that, we can jump over to see the analysis templates itself. We're going to create one. And the first thing you really should do is always give it a name, and developers always like meaningful names, right? So we're going to give it something simple like mass rollup. The next important thing we really have to do is choose the analysis type, and we want it to be the rollup. And when I click that, you're going to notice that the screen in the middle is going to change quite dramatically. So what you'll want to do is if your example element hasn't been set, you'll want to go ahead and declare it to be tank farm 1. If your sample child element hasn't been selected yet, go ahead and choose one of them. For this particular roll-up analysis, we're going to want to roll up the child elements of tank farm 1. And then we're going to need an attribute name that we want. Well, what we're going to want is mass. That should be no mystery. So I'm going to go ahead and type mass in here. As I tabbed out, you'll notice that the mass went to the top of this list and it's got a green check mark. The mass is on the root level of the tank elements. And we can even be more specific. We can say we want only to calculate the mass attributes that come directly from a tank element template. The biggest thing, of course, is the function I want to have. And as you can see, that's obscured. So I'm going to briefly maximize my screen. And you'll now see several functions that appear. We're going to want the sum function because we want to sum tank 1 mass, tank 2 mass, etc. We want to have that mapped to an attribute. So we're going to map it to the only one we've got, the mass. We can click evaluate if we'd like. Yeehaw. Bringing our screen back to normal, everything's a little squirrely, but we're going to go ahead and check in our changes. Let's switch over to the attribute templates. So if you take a look, we've got an orange diamond, if you will, and it's telling us it's a roll-up sum. We've got a yellow tag to denote that it's based on a PyPoint, and the green T tells us that's from a template. Now we're ready to take a look at the elements themselves. As you can see, it was saying point created. I'm going to go ahead and click refresh here. Apply changes. And we're going to have to wait for some data to come through. Okay, we're back. That took about 10 seconds. And I clicked refresh, and as you see, I've got a mass of 132,000. If we go to tank 1 and look at its mass, it's at 43,089. So yeah, those numbers look right to me. And that's great, and that happened for 2 tanks. Well, what happens if we were going to start suddenly adding more tanks? Let's go ahead and do that. We're going to add a new child element. It's going to be based on the tank template. And we got to give it a name. We're going to do blank 3 is the name. And click refresh, apply changes, and we're seeing more data coming through. Now that's just for tank 3. But as you would see now, the tank farm measurements, if we wait, we're going to see this number jump up dramatically from 132,000 to something much bigger. As you see now, I've got about 15,000 more in there. And if we jump over to tank 3, lo and behold, we have around 15,000 tons. So looks like we're in the right ballpark. So there you have it. The tank farm's mass is being calculated by a roll-up analysis, and that calculated value is being saved back to a PyPoint. For our small database, we only have one tank farm element where we're doing this, but thanks to using a templated design and asset analytics, this is quite simple to scale this out for a dozen, 100, or even 1,000 tank farms, and with very minimal effort on your part.